Kia ora, good evening. Seeking potential buyers for the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter and diversification in the local economy are two topics being discussed by some of Invercargill City Council's heads this afternoon. The smelter uses 15% of the country's power and is owned by Rio Tinto subsidiary Pacific Aluminium, which has been unsuccessfully negotiating reduced power prices with state-owned enterprise Meridian Energy for 9 months. State-owned Enterprises Minister Tony Ryle announced yesterday that Rio Tinto has declined government's offer to help bridge a negotiations gap. He says government is not interested in providing a long-term subsidy, but it's understood the existing power contract remains in place until at least January 2016. Invercargill Mayor Tim Shadbolt says Tiwai's current situation is a catalyst to act, but says there's no simple solution to the problem.
It's such a mixture of conflicting interests. We don't know what impact it will have on the power share float. That's a major factor. We don't know the real cost of having to ship that power, that electricity to the North Island. The infrastructure isn't there yet. It could be coming to Benmore. A lot of that electricity will be lost during transmission because of the long distance and going through Cook Strait. There are just so many factors that are yet to be resolved.
So you've called a meeting which is going this afternoon. Tim, what do you hope to achieve there?
What we want to achieve is looking at diversification, and we've done it with the dairy industry in Southland, for example. We've got to look at having new industries and go out quite aggressively in search of what can be established here to take the place. And I think we've also got to look for alternative owners. If Rio Tinto don't want this smelter, it's on the market, we should be out there looking for some partner, and maybe China. Well, let's look anywhere in the world to see, because it is the purest aluminium in the world, 99.98% purity, and that must be a factor.
If you do find a Chinese buyer, again, how viable will it be given the prices of electricity in New Zealand and the commodity prices for aluminium?
Well, the Chinese seem to have a different attitude towards products such as this. I mean, the world market is like a roller coaster ride. They don't see things in terms of 4 or 5 years. They tend to look at 10 or 20 years. And if you look at the overall value of electricity and the value, which is really what aluminium smeltering is all about, and the value of the smelter and the products it can produce, then I think it definitely has value.
Crime has fallen to the lowest level in 24 years nationally, with the numbers of recorded crimes dropping almost 7.5% in 2012. Sarah Bedford looked at how Southland is stacking up.
Crime fell 4.5% in Southland last year, the fourth consecutive fall the region has seen. The number of recorded offences in the region has dropped from more than 10,000 in 2009 to around 7,500 last year. Southland Area Commander Inspector Lane Todd is pleased with the drop.
It's obviously very fantastic news for Southland, and if we add them all up, we're talking over 3,200 lease offences in that time, so that's absolutely fantastic.
Among areas to see drops, theft offences fell more than 7%, burglary offences were down 8%, property damage dropped 1.8%, and drug offences decreased close to 27%. He says the introduction of a new proactive policing approach has made a difference.
We put in a strategy 4 years ago around being more proactive, and obviously that's paid dividends because we have been consecutive losses or reductions in our last 4 years. But this year, as we move into this year, we're looking a lot more around prevention. So it's trying to get ahead of the game rather than just waiting for the reports to come in.
Not all areas saw a drop. There were rises in the number of serious assaults and sexual assaults.
Yeah, well, obviously, serious assaults or sexual assaults is very serious, and but having said that, we've got high resolution rates with those. That's the fact that they're actually solved. But as far as the assaults go, what we've noticed is overall assaults have reduced in terms of the CBD, which is traditionally where we'd get what we'd classify as minor assaults, but then they can escalate. So unfortunately what happens is quite a few of those more serious assaults are family violence related. So that's why we're concerned, and we are going to be putting in some stronger strategies around that.
Inspector Todd says police are targeting family violence, an ongoing problem.
The only thing that we're really concerned about is family violence, and that's something we've never been able to reduce in the last 3 or 4 years. So we are certainly going to be focusing on that a lot more now. We do have some good strategies in place with working with partner agencies, but we're just not making the ground that we want to make. So we've currently got a full-time family violence coordinator at the moment, and we are going to be putting some more staff into that team, and that will be solely so we can do a lot more prevention around that. We just don't have the staff resources to do it at present, so we are going to boost that team up.
Compared with the rest of New Zealand, Inspector Todd says Southland is doing well.
Against the rest of the country, we've been performing very well, and specifically if we look at our resolution rate, which is the crimes that are actually solved, we're sitting just under 60% for Southland. Nationally, the figure's 54%, and against the Southern District whole is 55%. So, I mean, that's significant in itself. So we're reducing our crime, but we're also solving a lot more, so that's definitely a win-win.
With new technology to be introduced and problem areas being targeted, Inspector Todd says he's confident crime in the south will continue to fall in the future. Sarah Bedford, South Today News.
The driver of a Fonterra milk tanker was lucky to walk away without injury today after his truck came off the road near Hedgehope. Police were called to the crash on Drought Road just after 12:30. Gore Police Constable Simon Ballantyne says it appears the trailer of the truck has swung out on a tight bend, going over a bank and pulling the truck down with it. He says the driver was lucky not to be hurt, with his seatbelt saving him from injuries. The tanker was carrying around 20,000 litres of milk, but only a small amount leaked. Fonterra also sent a response team to the crash, and police are investigating the cause. After the break, how much impact has rain in the south made on the dry conditions? Welcome back. Critically low river levels in Gore have had a questionable reprieve with some rain overnight. Gore District Council Water Assets Manager Sarah Dowling says rain overnight halted further restrictions being imposed today as the Mataura approached a critical low. Environment Southland has suspended 40 consent holders from taking and/or discharging water, and 8 of the sites monitored had the lowest rain levels ever recorded for March. Mandeville is the driest area with just 13.5 millimetres of rainfall last month. That's 19% of normal. 4.1 millimetres of rain fell for the 24 hours till 9 o'clock this morning in Invercargill, and more showers are forecast over the coming days. A personal locator beacon has proved a saviour twice in 6 days in the Fiordland area. The beacon was set off by a trio of men on Thursday when one of the men suffered a suspected broken leg. He was airlifted to Te Anau Medical Centre for treatment. The other 2 remained in the Milford Sound area and were camping separately last night when the beacon was activated for a second time at 5 a.m. this morning. A search and rescue response found one of the men hypothermic after his campsite was flooded overnight by a metre of water. He is believed to be the brother of the hunter rescued last week and was taken to Te Anau for treatment. Despite police warnings of a lowered speed tolerance, hundreds of drivers were fined, the majority for speeding in the south over the Easter holiday period, which ended at 6 a.m. this morning. 272 drivers were fined, with 180 of those for speeding. Police were concerned about drivers setting their cruise control to 104 kilometres per hour instead of the legal limit of 100. 6 people are facing drink driving charges after being caught over the limit. Nationally, 3 people died on New Zealand roads this Easter. While none of these were in Southland, there were 7 minor crashes in the region. New fishing regulations could be introduced in Southland by October. Fish and Game has proposed a number of changes, including allowing salmon to be taken on the Mararoa River, allowing spin fishing in the Eglinton River, spring fishing in parts of major rivers, and a reduced bag limit on lakes. Sarah Bedford spoke to Fish and Game Southland manager Maurice Rodway.
Well, every 3 years we look at our regulations. We collect data on our fish stocks, of course, over time. We survey anglers over the period between regulation reviews, and this year is our 3-yearly regulation review. So we're always looking to update the regulations to take into account things like the new technology such as soft baits and anglers' views, and also things like fish stocks, whether fish stocks change they might go down, or there might be pressure on the resource, and therefore sometimes we can alter the regulations to take into account those things, to respond to those things that are happening.
Now, would these apply just for Southland?
Yes, they would. They only apply to the Southland region. Each fish and game region around the country does its own Anglers Notice Review on a 3-yearly basis, and this time is our turn.
Now, a couple of those changes, reduced catches and a longer season, seem to contradict each other. Can you explain the reasons behind those?
Well, the reduced bag limit is in the lakes, where there's been quite a lot of increased pressure lately, and the lakes are generally quite low productive systems. They're very pristine. The fish in them don't grow that big unless they're very old. And in contrast to that, the lowland rivers of our region are generally quite productive and generally have higher numbers of fish. And the spring season would offer opportunities for people to utilise that resource. And at the moment we don't have evidence that it's being depleted. Certainly the numbers of people fishing in those lowland reaches has reduced a bit, but I think that's been more due to the perception that the water quality is poor, and there's a risk that they might, they might have some adverse effects from that. So no, but generally the fish stocks in the lowland rivers are quite good.
Wildlife Sanctuary Ulva Island's pest-free status is once again under threat, with rats found recently. 3 rats have been found in traps on the island. An open sanctuary off the coast of Stewart Island, monitoring in November, had not shown signs of rats. Mirahuku and Southern Islands Area Manager Andy Roberts says while the island is pest-free, on average 1 rat a year manages to make its way there. He says keeping rats away is a constant battle. The island is home to some of New Zealand's most endangered birds, such as the mohua and saddleback. And that's it from news. Coming up in sport, Super 15 action from the Easter weekend. We're back tomorrow at 5:30. See you then. Good night.